Hello and welcome to Ask Lovecraft After Dark. I am very excited to introduce to you all a friend of mine I've been working with for a long time, Lewis, who you all will know as Linkara over at Atop the Fourth Wall. Lewis, welcome.
Ah, yeah, I love the fact this is Lovecraft After Dark. Yet I'm pretty sure we're not going to be going into risque territory with this interview.
I joked for the longest time that I was going to create a Patreon exclusive called Ask Lovecraft After Dark. For folks who really wanted the salacious business, but like I'm a missionary kid, so like what counts as outre for me is like pretty low. Although I'm a missionary kid that like went really hard into like horror and like the horror world and things like that. I don't know.
Kidding.
I don't know if it's like responding to like the super conservative Christian upbringing, except like I didn't like that wasn't my household. That was like the churches I went to. I went to like conservative churches and whatnot. But like one of my childhood movies was Name of the Rose. Like my parents were like, "This is a good Christian movie about monks." I'm like, yeah. So if anyone wants to know like how I became Lehman, like the fact that like Name of the Rose was like in pretty frequent rotation in my household. Doctor Strangelove was something I watched a bunch as a kid. The Oblong Box. Have you seen that masterpiece?
I have not seen that one.
Vincent Price, Christopher Lee, like just people being buried alive. Oh,
now I really want to see it.
It's fantastic. It's bonkers and like just a little racist because like 60s. So,
yeah.
Just forewarning there. What else? Oh, Fantastic Planet. Did you ever see that bonkers 70s movie?
Yes. I'm pretty sure I did.
I
might be. Yeah, I at the very least I've heard of Fantastic Planet.
It's the animated movie with like the giant blue-skinned aliens that like their like organs all like morph out of each other as they meditate and they keep humans as pets. Yeah. That my parents are like, it's a cartoon. He's fine.
This is sometimes this is it's good details when you become a parent, make sure you know what you're letting your kids watch.
Very true. I'm like purposefully traumatizing my kids. I showed them Honey I Shrunk the Kids this weekend.
That one's fine. Get them to love ants right out the start.
Well, they're like, I don't like that ant, and then the scorpion shows up like, no, auntie. So
I'm gonna show them Never Ending Story.
My wife wants to see. I didn't grow up on Never Ending Story. I didn't see Never Ending Story until college, and by that point, I'm just like, yes. The very sad for the horse. What were your traumatizing like childhood films?
Never Ending Story was one of them. Nice. Let's see. Short Circuit 2.
Oh wow, not even one.
Yeah, it's one of those weird cases. Sometimes I see the sequel before I see the original. I saw Short Circuit 2 before I saw the original Short Circuit. I saw, let's see, what else did I see? I saw, this is not less kid, more teenager. I saw Nightmare on Elm Street 3 before I saw the original Nightmare on Elm Street.
Okay, all right.
What else? Ghostbusters 2 I saw before the original Ghostbusters.
Oh, that's just confusing. Why am I gooey? Man, so what was it? There was like a Nightmare Before Elm Street show, or like
Freddy's Nightmares.
And like I remember seeing an episode of that. I think literally like my parents were visiting some friends and like, Lehman, just go watch some TV while we're like talking to our friends. And like that was on. And I was just like, I don't think I'm supposed to be watching this.
Oh, well, those are the best stuff when you're a kid and you manage to sneak in and watch the thing you're not supposed to.
Oh man.
Like as a kid, Tales from the Crypt, when I was able to sneak in and get in an episode late at night, my parents would be asleep on the couch. And like down in the basement, I'd sneak down into the landing, like the TV's just playing. I'm not, playing whatever. They don't like horror, so this is just like leftover from whatever movie they were watching beforehand. So I was able to just like sit and watch from the distance of that, and then pretend to be asleep if they woke up.
That's always very key. Like I don't know what this is, Mom. I was looking, yeah. Oh, so much late night Tales from the Crypt with like one eye, just like hoping my parents didn't walk in on me.
Managed to sneak in some late night Mystery Science Theater 3000 during that time too, because sometimes they would be on Comedy Central.
Excellent. And so yeah, let's use that to launch pad right out of. Was it all this like late night monster movie, watching that eventually like began to steer you into sort of the world of horror hosting and exploring the strange and macabre?
but not really, actually.
Okay.
It's actually, the thing is, back in the day when TNT Monster Vision was on and Joe Bob Briggs was hosting, I hated it. Because back when I was a kid, I just wanted to watch the movie. Who is this weird redneck guy who keeps interrupting the movie? I don't want to see him. I want to watch the movie. So, and unfortunately, Minnesota, at least the area I was in, as far as I knew, did not really have a lot of late night horror hosts. So I only discovered the concept of that much later when I learned about like Elvira and Vampira, all the classics, the classics, ones who have retained pop culture knowledge to this day. And then of course now I appreciate Joe Bob Briggs and I love watching old clips of Monster Vision, all these kind of things. But I really got into horror back around my teenage years, and I think it was Night of the Living Dead. One late night, I decided I wanted to watch this because the title, I knew basically nothing about it. I think I knew it was a zombie movie. But I didn't know the plot. I didn't know the overall things that were going to happen in it. And I was like, you know what? I want to get into horror. I want to be the horror guy. So I'm going to start watching this and go from there. And it was great. I loved Night of the Living Dead, and I wanted to see more horror stuff. And that got me, of course, into Nightmare on Elm Street and eventually Friday the 13th, the 80s slasher movies for a bit. But I tended to always gravitate towards supernatural stuff. I love haunted house stuff.
Okay, yes. Okay, so I was the horror guy at Blockbuster for a longest time. Like my few years that I worked at Blockbuster during their like waning period, I burned through the whole horror section. And yes, like supernatural horror, like I want me some like Night of the Demons, I want a Leprechaun, like I want just like weird, creepy, goofy stuff going down.
Unfortunately, my parents would not let me rent horror movies from Blockbuster and whatnot. While and this is it's the weird thing because my parents are conservatives. They're not super ultra conservative, but they're like, this is not appropriate for your age. I'm not going to let you watch this. But of course, yes, they let me do it when I was at a teenager, and by that point, most Blockbusters had stopped being a major relevant thing.
Sure.
But we still had cable and late night movies, so I was able to still catch a bunch of horror stuff that way.
Nice.
Although when I was a kid and we would go to Blockbuster and Hollywood Video and whatnot, they would usually limit us to like one video or one video game. So we would get like a Sega Genesis game, and in terms of tapes, you'd usually get like Doctor Who episodes.
Oh dang! Like
yeah,
I worked at Blockbuster. Like you got to go tape at a time. So that's a racket right there.
Classic Who episodes when they actually managed to have the entire serial on one tape, because of course sometimes the longer ones had to be two. But that's how. But of course, Classic Who would also occasionally dip into horror and gothic stuff like that, so that was still appreciated. And occasionally we would like rent other Blockbuster movies that were like had just come out, like Star Trek movies. We only had so many Star Trek movies on tape at the time, so Star Trek First Contact. What was another good rental one? I watched Pride of the X-Men, the original that pilot movie for the X-Men series that didn't get made.
The one that the stand-up arcade is based on, with like Australian Wolverine. Like when I finally saw, like, cause one of my managers at Blockbuster had like a tape of that. I was like, you gotta check this out. It's got Kitty Pryde. And I was like, what's going on? And then like I saw the animation style and the drawings, and I realized that's where that arcade is from.
Yep.
Nothing moves the juggernaut. No, is it nothing stops the juggernaut?
Nothing moves the blob. Nothing moves the blob. Nothing stops the juggernaut. Immovable force and unstoppable object.
Oh, such a great game. Okay, so there we go. So now I know in a lot of conservative households, they have an idea of like, okay, like these movies are like on the list. We're not going to do it. But if it's a book, then that's okay. Was that also a way to like sneak in like some of the forbidden nightmare horrors like through literature?
A little bit. They would of course not mind if I was like reading Stephen King, and I didn't read a lot because I only had access to so much of the library and whatnot. Right. But I've read Needful Things, and did like book reports on that in like 10th grade. And for a different English class, where they actually assigned Frankenstein.
Okay.
So that was fun. I've never read the original Dracula, and I really should at some point because I love the idea of the epistolary novel.
I tried. I really did. I tried. And like, you get why it's good. Like, it's good. It's just, it's a lot. And I also like, I think I was reading it like right after like my kids, like my second son was born. So like my brain was like, trying to just do anything like mental. Um, I do have vivid memories though of like being in a hospital and being informed that like my wife had a massive bleed out while I'm reading Dracula and being like, oh, this is weird timing. But eventually you must have gotten into comic books. Was that
Oh, yeah.
as a young man, or did you come to those sort of later? What was your transition into that medium?
It was a weird gradual thing. Most of my original exposure to superhero stuff was the Adam West Batman series, obviously, to start with. And according to my parents, they said my first word was Batman watching the Adam West series.
Okay.
So, fateful future there. Then, of course, the Batman animated series, the X-Men animated series, the big 90s, glow up of all these wonderful superhero cartoons at the time.
Like The Tick.
I loved The Tick. And my brother became a huge fan of the character Nightwing, aka Dick Grayson, and the first Robin. So he would buy the Nightwing comics and like pin them to his wall. He actually had like this huge collection all over here. Right now I've got like soundproof foam all over my office. Just imagine each of those was a Nightwing comic. And he would occasionally like take them down, let me read them. Most of the time he wanted to like, keep them up for decorative purposes, didn't want to have to deal with putting them all back up again and everything like that. So I would read them and I was fascinated by this character, like, Robin, who had broken away and gone his own dark direction and wanted to do his own thing. And I learned in one of the issues that he was actually part of a superhero team called the Titans. And I was like, wow, I did not know that he was part of his own superhero team. I want to go and look up this team. So in 5th grade, a regular thing that my class, I can't remember, was it Minnesota? There was a time I lived in Pennsylvania, so I'm pretty sure it was Minnesota, because I lived in Pennsylvania for a couple of years and moved back to Minnesota. Long story there. We moved back to Minnesota, 5th grade. The 5th grade would always go on a quasi camping trip. It's more like, to a summer camp kind of area just for a weekend called Laurentian. And of course it's like a 3-4 hour bus ride up to these camping grounds. And so my mom was like, okay, we'll bring you to the comic store. By this point, I wanted to get into more comics, but I only just had a handful of graphic novels from all over the place, which is still a problem with superhero comics to this day, trying to find what the hell to read. And I discovered this comic, JLA/The Titans, the Technus Imperative. And it's this 3-issue miniseries, this wonderful, wonderful book from the mid to late 90s, where all the members of the Justice League fight all the members of the Titans. And at the time, by that point, there were like 30 some Titans members. Not all at once, obviously, but this was a big tribute to the entire history of the team. It brought Cyborg back. Cyborg had been turned into an alien robot thing. It's complicated. Comic books. But it's this wonderful 3-issue miniseries with wonderful art from Phil Jimenez, written by Devin Grayson, and I was hooked. I was just like flipping pages, and they had these wonderful little bios for each character who appeared, just like a quick rundown of what team they're part of, what their powers are, and it's like, oh, cool, who's that? And they sometimes would talk about the history stuff. I'm like, I want to know more about this, and that got me into reading more and more Titan stuff. And from the Titans, I jumped off into the Justice Society. I'm a DC guy at heart, just reading so many comic book stuff, so much DC stuff, and just getting completely immersed in it. By that point, I was hooked. So that was around age 10 to 14 or so.
See, I had the experience of having brothers that were super into comic books. And so like there was always comics around, and I would be like, oh, like this Superman has a mermaid for a girlfriend. That's very nice. Well, this is the only Superman one I'm going to be reading. Like, this is all I know about Superman. It's all I can bring to the table. Like, I had one Batman where I think it was the Jason Todd Robin. I think it was like when like it was either introducing him or reintroducing him. Batman got his wheel cap stolen. That's all I know.
It was a reintroduction then, because Silver Age Jason Todd, before the whole big reboot, was just carbon copy Dick Grayson. He was also a circus performer whose parents were killed, and it's just like, well, we've upgraded him, might as well just carbon copy and have the same backstory. Then when Crisis on Infinite Earths happened, they're like, okay, let's give him something more original. And so he's a street punk who's tried to steal the tires on the Batmobile.
There we go.
And
So I had,
Batman just like, I'm gonna adopt this kid.
and so like, but like I never like if the few times I try to be like, I'm gonna go and get my own comics, I get like X-Force or something and be like, well, this isn't very interesting. Like,
Yeah, that's discouraging. Before then, they had this wonderful thing. I don't know if they still do this, but action figures would get packaged with a comic book inside of them to help get you interested in them and might feature the character inside of it.
now is this during
so that,
is this during the weird, creepy, like speculator crash times when they were like doing
Yes.
all sorts of like the holofoils and
Yep.
the okay.
Yep, it was in the 90s. So yeah, that was the era when Ron Perelman was trying to turn Marvel into Disney. And of course, funny how things work out.
Indeed. All right, so you're DC guy, you're loving your comics, but at some point you're like, you decide you're going to take this and make it into an empire. So how does this how did that translate? Was this did you already have the idea that you wanted to do a web series and you sort of were like, well, I like comics, I'll do that, or did you just love comics so much that you're like, I must bring this to more people?
In the early to mid 2000s, there, before YouTube was around, there was no way of actually like producing that kind of content online, doing, long form video stuff. You couldn't hold it. I was lucky to download like, quick clips of like a Pokemon episode or Sailor Moon episodes or something when I was in my anime phase for a while.
You got to get to Newgrounds or albino black sheep, you got to do the Flash animation.
Exactly. So back then when everyone was interested in following the style of Mystery Science Theater 3000 and talk about bad media, they would do long form recaps. And the big ones for that one for me was Jabutu's movie reviews, B Movie Planet and 3B Theater, and the Agony Booth, which is still around, although they have pivoted to paid content nowadays and a lot more video stuff. But back then, it was all text recap with their own like sarcastic remarks as they fully recapped everything. And I was like, I can do this with comic books. And so I started my own blog called Atop the Fourth Wall. Originally, it was going to be called Comics Shouldn't Suck, but there's already there was already a comic book website or a news site called Comics Should Be Good, or at least it was a column that's now part of Comic Book Resources. Okay. And so I was like, okay, that's too much copying like that. And I was like, all right, well, Mystery Science Theater 3000, its title is actually not to do with anything on the show. It just kind of combined a bunch of words together and it sounded cool. So I was like, well, I've always loved the concept of the fourth wall, the invisible wall between the reader and the audience and the actual thing happening where they're like, can't see us and we can see them. So I'm beyond the fourth wall, or I'm atop the fourth wall, and that's where the name just kind of went in there and it stuck. I try to do them weekly, but the problem, of course, is when you're just doing this as a hobby, it's fun, but you only have so much time to do it, especially when by that point, I was graduating high school. I was in college now, and YouTube was starting to come around, but I was like, well, I can't really do this as often as I want to because I just don't have the free time for it, don't have quite the same passion for it. So once a week became once a month, and then once a month became once in a blue moon, and then around that time, I was part of the Super Dickory forums. SuperDickory.com was a website that chronicled a bunch of goofy ass Silver Age covers wherever, because back in the day, if you wanted to,
I'll show them the greatest boner of all time.
Exactly. The Silver Age was full of fun stuff like that, but in particular, Superman stuff in the Silver Age, we needed to hook readers in and get people interested in. So what new ways could we show Superman being an asshole? Oh, Aquaman, I seem to have this cup of water right here I'm not going to give you.
I made you this Father's Day gift of a sweater. I'm sorry, Jimmy. I'm going to have to burn it with my laser eyes.
Exactly. Stuff like that. And it's hilarious. But the forums were full of other comic book fans, and we would talk about a bunch of stuff. And then one day, someone posted up, the Nostalgia Critic reviewed Batman and Robin. And I was like, this is interesting. Let me take a look at this. Like, oh my God, this is freaking hilarious. And I've got to, start doing this myself. And at the time he had started up, Doug Walker had started up That Guy with the Glasses, the website itself. And he held a contest because the Nostalgia Critic was his primary thing, but the website was named after a similar thing to Ask Lovecraft. In this case, Ask That Guy with the Glasses, where the concept was this guy in a robe and a pipe, and he's like, and who seemed authoritative and smart, but he'd always answer in the most insane, like malicious way possible to the questions, like what's 2 + 2? Go to hell. Kind of things. And he held a contest. You'll submit your own Ask That Guy things. And I did Ask That Guy with the hat. And I had this hat that my grandmother had given me, this fedora or trilby. There's been constant debate about which one it is. So I wore that, put on a robe, and did a bunch of questions that I thought would be funny. And they saw that. And then I started doing the regular comic reviews after that, just as okay, I've proven I can make a video and I think it's pretty funny, so now let me actually try to turn one of my comic scripts into video. And I did that starting with the third part of a Clone Saga review. I thought of it would be a special Halloween thing. The Clone Saga is like the scariest time in Spider-Man comics, so why don't I just make this whole thing where oh, it's spooky because it's the Clone Saga, and it's like not actually Halloween related at all. But like the first 2 parts would be text reviews, and then I would pivot to video. And the third part was my first ever Atop the Fourth Wall episode. And when I started making a few of them, I submitted to That Guy with the Glasses because they had an open submission policy at the time, and the rest is history.
There we go. Wow,
it's a mouthful.
That's an origin though. And then, I mean, one of the things that folks talk about with Atop the Fourth Wall is not just, the reviews themselves, but like the lore. You're talking about like, oh, I want to know the origin of this guy and his story and which team he's on. Like yep. your TV tropes is now, beggars some of those comic lines.
Here's a funny thing, because it's like there's the lore of my show, and then there's just learning about the lore of comic books. Back in the day, I had a recurring gag that sometimes people want me to bring back called the continuity alarm. The misconception was oh, he's pointing out when the continuity is wrong. No, the continuity alarm was to stop me from talking about it so much. Because at the time, I thought people wouldn't give a crap about all the excessive minutia of comic book continuity. And then I retired the gag when I realized, no, people want to know this. Because the comic book industry sucks at teaching people this. And there's just so much stories and so much history that people, that people loved it when I would talk about like weird indie companies or long histories of characters they had never heard of, or how this character had played a role in this, big event thing. And they loved hearing about that, loved hearing about all that stuff. And in the case of my show's continuity, excuse me again, when I started, I wanted to do a hook. I wanted to have something like, because the thing is, people weren't watching every single episode. And of course, it's understandable now, especially nowadays when there's so much content. But for me, I was like, what can I do to get people to come back and watch every single video? Well, how about I introduce like this mystery happening in the background? There's this robot double of me who's running around and planning nefarious things. So like, you got to come back for the next episode and skip to the end to see if there's going to be more of this. It was harder to skip to the end back then. Sure. Now, because I wasn't on YouTube at the time, we still had Blip. Right. Nice. And the early versions of Blip, they needed it to load the whole way through before you could just jump to the end. So I was like, okay, you got to watch through the whole thing. I'll get the views, I'll get the money, and people will be watching more stuff, and they'll like come back each episode. And it just kind of went like that. I had no plan whatsoever. I had no idea how the hell I was going to resolve it. It was just like, okay, let's keep this going for a while, figure out what the actual deal is with it, and then set a date when I need to like resolve the storyline. And people loved that and enjoyed it so much, like, well, might as well just keep this going.
What's really surprised you about the response to the show over the years?
The fact that sometimes there are people who just watch for the storyline. It's less so in these last couple of years because the current storyline I'm on has stretched out far longer than it was supposed to.
That happens.
COVID, the fact that it's probably it involves more and more people. It's very special effects heavy, so I rely upon my special effects guy, the game show reviewer, to provide a lot of stuff for that. So it's just so this one is stretched out for like 4 years, but a lot of people have said I tune in specifically to see if there's storyline at the end, and then I skip right to that, and I'll come back and watch the review later. And for me, it's always been like, oh, that's great and all. It's like I the reviews should be the focus because that's what the primary thing is. So I love that there are people who are that invested in it and still want to see more of it and keep me going doing it, even after they have fallen. The storylines and reviews have fallen out of favor, much like angry reviewing itself has mostly fallen out of favor.
No, there's definitely been like shifts and waves in the sort of the as you mentioned, the transition from Blip to YouTube and the various other like kind of channels that have sort of sprung up. When we were briefly work colleagues, I found it really fascinating, how different my show was from everyone, and like the weird things that people like. I had so many people come at me because they were like, your show is too short, it's only like 3 minutes long. I'm like, yeah, I'm just improvising like answers as Lovecraft. Like, why would you want like 20 minutes of it? And it's because they were used to like 15-20 minute long like anime reviews and comic book reviews and things like that, and it was such a different audience from what I had become accustomed to on YouTube. So and even that though has changed, like especially now with TikTok. Like, TikTok is even more like ADD and less
gotta cram in everything in like 30 seconds. And even this and TikTok is the evolution of Vine, which was only 6 seconds.
That's right.
I'm still shocked that people like manage to gain massive followers for and like huge amounts of credit and monetization and whatnot somehow from just tons and tons of 6-second videos.
I mean, like, I'm not gonna lie, like my bizarre, like Ohio weird content has struck some nerve, and like more people have watched my like 15-second Raven Queen video than I think watched 10 years of Lovecraft content. Like, it blows my mind thinking that.
It's less of a surprise to me in terms of some of my content, because one of my other shows is History of Power Rangers, which is like, an exhaustive, glorified Wikipedia is what we like to call it. Because a lot of it is just recapping an entire season of Power Rangers, hitting on the important story notes, providing analysis along the way and jokes and whatnot. But History of Power Rangers is more popular than the thing I do every week because no one cares about comic books.
I guess that's the other thing, right? Like your show has now been around so long that like you've seen like the impact of the MCU on like comics and like how that's changed things. Like what has that experience been like?
It's been a little frustrating at times, honestly, because the thing that has dawned on me, especially as the industry continues on, is that it is so averse to actual change and trying to market itself. The big two suck at marketing comics. You would think that they would be good at it considering this is their entire job, but then again, if they were good at it, comic book reading numbers would not be as low as they are. Their YouTube channels have evolved over the years, so they're slightly better, but like 3-4 years ago, I decided, hey, why don't I check out the Marvel and DC YouTube channels? I'm curious what they actually do on those. On the DC side of things, most of their content at the time was, here's 30 seconds of something you have to sign up for our subscription service to actually see more of. And most of it is not, and while it does talk about comics, you need to pay to get in. Other times, it's like, promoting movies, promoting TV shows. And of course, in turn, their podcast discussions and whatnot were just talking about, the TVs and movies and whatnot in turn. Marvel was worse. Because I called History of Power Rangers glorified Wikipedia. Sometimes they would have a Comics 101, in which case it was like a Ghost Rider one. Here's a picture of Ghost Rider with some fancy graphics around and literal text describing the character.
Wow.
It's like maybe some music in the background, but just scrolling along. Read the video. No narration. And that's the stuff that actually talked about comics. Then you had... the one that sticks in my mind is, here's how to make an Infinity Gauntlet cookie. You put your hand on the thing here to shape out of the dough, and then you put like M&Ms for the face you're making is kind of described as like 3 minutes, and then you put the M&Ms on there for the gems, and there you have it, an Infinity Gauntlet cookie. They'd have a trailer, and it's like, oh, hey, a trailer for an event comic. Let me see what this is like. Okay, they have some motion comic style graphics of stuff, and then we just have talking heads saying these creators are really awesome. You know, it's some awesome stuff. We're doing good stuff here. Where this event's going to be really good. It's going to feature unknown character that most people have never heard of. It's going to be really fun, and we're just doing really good stuff here, just like that for 2 minutes. Never talking. They don't describe what the plot is. Why people who are not normally into comics should give a crap, and just circle jerking about how awesome they are. And it's like, you have, you know, it's impractical to try to sell comic books on TV. It's you take a massive loss to do so. You just would not get back at the cost of doing it on television. But the internet and YouTube, you have this wonderful place where people absorb so much content. You could be doing what I'm doing. Excuse me. And you could even do it much cheaper than what I'm doing it. Because you don't have to pay someone to tell lots and lots of jokes about it. You just have to have people talking about it and like showing off comic scans and saying like, you know, like brief summaries of the characters and important storylines. They had like one show that was doing that. And the problem, and it was a good show. It was Marvel TLDR. And the problem with that one is there was too much production value in that. It was an animated series, and it was good. It was really good. It was entertaining. Okay. It was funny, but they only released like one video a month while they were doing it, because obviously it takes a lot of work to put into it. And they were talking about like some fun one-shots and whatnot, instead of trying to appeal broader and to tell people what they should do to pick it up. You know, like pre-order this today. That's the other thing. The industry sucks at telling readers what they should be doing. Because the thing is, comic book sales numbers aren't actually comic book sales numbers. Comic book sales numbers are orders from comic book stores. They are how many things have been ordered from stores on a monthly basis for individual titles, but that doesn't necessarily translate into sales of the books. We don't actually know how well the books are doing, because of course the comic stores aren't only keeping track of, okay, this is how much inventory I have left. Is it worth it to order more? Should I even order as many next time? And they don't tell people out there that the way to get sales number up and get them to, you know, show love for a book is to pre-order, because pre-orders are the actual things that matter. Because if a store is getting tons of pre-orders, if it's like in there, if like someone says, hey, can you put this, you know, title in my my pickup box, my comic box, because of course stores will do that. They're pull lists, that's what they're called. Put this on my pull list. You know, you have a little box set up with a person's name on it, and you know what I'm picking up every week or every month. Tell your comic stores to pre-order the books. They don't say that. They never say that. They don't promote their digital stuff because, of course, they don't want to piss off brick and mortar stores, because most comic books are sold in brick and mortar stores. Mind you, the distribution system has been completely upended the last couple years.
I was about to say, I feel like isn't Diamond either like in arrears or like in just general implosion? Or
yeah, there was. This is a fascinating thing, and we're still trying to suss out what this actually means for the industry. So far, I haven't heard any like major bad news for it, which is good, considering back in the 90s during the speculator boom, Diamond Comics became the like sole distributor of comic books for like the entire United States. But the problem is that's a monopoly, and usually the government frowns upon monopolies, so they decided to investigate it, and they decided not to do anything about it, because they realized if we try to break up this monopoly, the entire American comic book market could collapse.
Oh, okay.
So fortunately, it looks like that had Diamond, Marvel and DC splitting off and doing their own things doesn't seem to have collapsed the market yet.
Okay, all right.
Probably helps with Marvel. They have Disney money.
Yes,
but still good, mostly. So, like I said, we're still trying to see what's actually going to happen. But so far, things seem okay. Fingers crossed.
I mean, at this point, I guess that's the thing, right? At this point, our comics scene is essentially like loss leading, like ads for eventual Marvel films, or like the laboratories where like stories are being played out in? Like how?
They're IP factories.
Okay, so that's all right. Okay.
They're intellectual property factories. You produce stories, and we will adapt those stories in. You create new characters that we can trademark and maybe put them into other stuff. If a comic book is successful, great. But at most, usually a comic book these days, at most, we'll see maybe 100 to 200,000 sales. Okay. Movies, millions of people.
Yeah.
And therein lies a problem again with their marketing. They don't want to try to have brand synchronization. Why doesn't they've tried it a few times, but usually in the worst ways possible. When Spider-Man 3 came out in the early 2000s, there was they decided, okay, as a promotional thing, we're going to put Spider-Man back in his black costume for a while because Spider-Man 3, he gets the Venom suit. But of course, they had their whole other storyline going on at the time. So he just randomly decides, I'm going dark now, so I'm going to put on my black costume again. So it's like, and anyone who picks up this is like, wait, what the hell is this? This is not like the Tobey Maguire movies. I don't know what the hell's going on here. And then they put it back down again and they walk away and they never read another comic book. And again, Marvel and DC could be doing so much more to promote their own works. Talk about old back issues. Get people interested in those. Create a market for people to buy digital copies of the back issues. Mind you, that's definitely a thing that has been screwed up now because Comixology has been fully absorbed by Amazon and their reader sucks.
Yes.
Comixology used to have a really good comic reader, used to have DRM free downloads of not DC and Marvel because, sticks and mud, but a lot of indie stuff, provided DRM free downloads of their comic books, not available anymore. So we'll see what happens if they actually fix that eventually, but I'm not holding my breath because it sucks right now.
Well, where are the areas of excitement? Where like if Marvel and DC are kind of just sort of, twiddling thumbs, like what kind of gets you jazzed and keeps you coming back?
Honestly, mostly it's the movies.
There we go.
I hate to say it because I've said for the longest time, like the movies will never be a replacement for the comics in my heart, but there's just but the MCU just keeps me so excited and keeps me so happy. I've been absent from DC for a while now just because of getting harder and harder to go to the comic book store every week. It's expensive. Comics are also an expensive hobby, which also sucks, and also why they need to do better with digital sales because digital could be a lot cheaper. But so I'm started to slowly get back into DC stuff right now. I'm lost on a few things, but fortunately, the other nice thing about the internet is anyone can look up what the hell they're talking about with some of these stories because the fans still remain as dedicated as ever to chronicling all this. Well-maintained fan wikis saying, okay, here's what happened, all the major plot point events, scans of things, that we share around, like for important moments and stuff that still resonates with us. I still love the medium. I'm still going to keep reading comic books, but it's always a frustrating exercise when they keep doing this to me and I keep coming back. And DC especially is still reboot happy.
Well,
they want to keep rebooting every few years, and now they've officially just declared continuity doesn't really matter except when it does.
What's the status of Hyper Time? That's what I want to know.
That's an interesting question. I'm sure you just said that as a joke, but that's a funny thing right now. Because the DC multiverse used to be pretty simple, just like, parallel universes separated by vibrational frequency. Now it's now parallel universes are in this magic orrery or something that all the different Earths are stacked like marbles on top of each other, in an hourglass or something.
Okay.
I know. Right. I'm trying to describe it to you, and it just sounds so insane. I'm like, why did you even do this? So so and what's good news on the DC front is about a year or two ago they finally fired Dan DiDio, who was the editor-in-chief of DC Comics, and he had good ideas, but he had a lot of bad ideas too, and there were a lot of decisions he made that were really against what a lot of readers wanted. He never met a storyline that he didn't think could be improved by killing more people, especially the Titans. He loved killing off the Titans.
No.
He hated legacy heroes because they aged like the older characters. Characters like Batman have had like 5 or 6 Robins now, but he's still perpetually 30. So he wanted to kill off Dick Grayson at one point just to make people forget how old Batman is. Whenever there is a popular character, unless there's like a creator at DC who's really pushing to like protect them and whatnot, they will usually get ignored in favor of the old versions of characters. Kyle Rayner got sidelined for because Jeff Johns wanted to bring back Hal Jordan properly into the fold.
Okay.
Cassandra Cain got really, really popular after she was introduced. And while she never did gangbusters in terms of sales numbers, she had a dedicated fan base who was always coming back to her, keeping the book alive. And then it got canceled and they turned her into a villain for a while. And the backlash was so severe, they had to quickly course correct. So yeah, they have all these dedicated characters and online fan bases who are like, let us, give us the stories we want. But he's like, no, I only want to talk about, we only want the classic characters. All these other characters, we'll introduce them, but they're gonna die. Particularly an event comic, which we're now having every year.
Oh yes, well, yes. If you were approached by Disney, to tell them what the next big Marvel thing would be, what would you want? What would you like to see on the big screen?
Secret Wars.
Ooh, okay.
And here's how you do Secret Wars. You got to start keeping some of your villains around, and that's gonna be tricky for Marvel movies, obviously, because we only have so many villains we can do, because the story to be complete, most villains they end up dead. So what we need to do is we need to introduce a few things just off the sidelines. We have a bunch of characters hearing whispers about a character called the Beyonder.
That was one of those like comics, the one where he like turns into like Michael Jackson at the end, like he's like affecting everyone's brain and giving everyone
That's
gold.
Secret Wars 2.
Oh, sorry.
No, but you're absolutely right. Spider-Man taught him how to pee. I'm still surprised that Secret Wars 2 has not been voted for my event comics month that I do on my show. Because Secret Wars 2 is bad. It's really bad. But the original Secret Wars is quite possibly the first proper event comic. And it's fairly simple premise. It's good guys versus bad guys. And this all-powerful being called the Beyonder basically, grabs all these characters from Earth and says, I am from beyond, slay your enemies, and anything that you desire will be yours. And so the heroes are like, well, we got to figure out what the hell we're going to do. We're not going to kill them, obviously, but we got to find a way to incapacitate them. And there's interpersonal drama between them. The villains all are figuring out what they want to do for their respective things. Galactus is there. Dr. Doom is there. Dr. Doom wants to steal the powers of the Beyonder because he's like, I don't care about this petty crap. I want the godlike power. Galactus decides to summon his spaceship to just kill them all and let God sort them out because he thinks the Beyonder can free him of his hunger. So you start introducing stuff like Galactus. You introduce Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom's not going to be dead in one movie. I sincerely doubt they would do that. But you introduce some minor villains. Maybe we'll have our MCU version of Dr. Octopus, because obviously, we have the one from No Way Home, obviously, but that's still from the original Sam Raimi movies. Maybe we'll introduce like a new version of Dr. Octopus for the MCU proper. We have a few other characters. We get like Venom or some other, Marvel staples that we want to stick around, but not necessarily be promoting their own thing. Maybe Mordru will be a thing. We haven't seen Doctor Strange yet, so we don't know what's going to happen there. And then we'll just like for a series of Marvel movies, they'll either the end of the movie or the end or the post-credit scene, which, by the way, I'm still shocked that there are people out there who don't watch post-credit scenes. They leave the theater. We're 10 years into this. How do you not know to stick around? And then we'll have like characters like suddenly, spotting this weird building nearby, this weird like football stadium size area. Land there to investigate, and then they beam away. and just do that for a few movies as we start like escalating. Where are all the heroes? These people have disappeared, and then suddenly we go to Secret Wars. Maybe we'll do a two-parter, but like we did with Infinity War. But let's actually have the Beyonder is this cosmic being who's being all like I am like we do it how they did on the Spider-Man animated series, where they introduce this guy who is interested in the concept of good versus evil, and he wants to study it and wants to find out which one is stronger. And so we have the good guys being all like, okay, we got to team up and stop evildoers, not necessarily for ourselves, but for stopping the Beyonder, because this guy has already proven that he doesn't give a crap about life. Again, we do it like how they did in the animated series. In the Spider-Man animated series, it was the second to last storyline was their adaptation of Secret Wars, where the Beyonder takes Spider-Man and basically says, I'm going to take this peaceful planet where there is no war or conflict, and I'm going to introduce a bunch of supervillains onto it who are going to wreck this place. We'll accelerate time by 1 year, and you have to assemble a team of heroes to stop them and prove that good is better than evil. But of course, Spidey's like, the real goal here is we got to stop the Beyonder because this guy is just going to keep doing stuff like this, and we got to stop him instead.
We got to teach him to pee.
Yes. They did not do that in the adaptation, but we got to have that. It's essential.
That'll be the post-credit sequence.
But yeah, that's what I would do. I want to see Secret Wars adapted because I think that would be a lot of fun. We keep it simple. We can still have interpersonal drama. We have drama from the villains because, of course, the MCU has done a really great job with all of its villains and making them their own characters. And maybe they have their own motivations. Maybe they betray each other. Maybe the heroes betrayed each other because, like, what they want is just supersedes any other priority, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, fantastic. I'm looking forward to it now.
I wish I hope they do something like that, but we don't even know what they're going to be building up to with the MCU nowadays.
That's very true.
Because they set up Thanos like pretty early on.
Man, I can't even keep I may be reaching peak MCU. We started Hawkeye and did not finish it. And that's
I still have not watched any of Hawkeye. I want to because I've heard really good things about it.
We've heard really good things too, but we sort of like we really enjoyed Loki. We really enjoyed WandaVision, but like we sort of like it's literally being at the buffet and being like, I can't have another egg roll. Like I will burst at this point.
And it's understandable. The good news is, but of course, people like me who've been following comics all our lives, this is easy for me to keep track of. Most of them tend to be self-contained and doing their own thing. Sure, obviously we have crossovers, we have other characters show up, but usually if they do, they give enough of an explanation about what the hell's going on, in my opinion anyway.
Well, and the TV shows, they've been doing a really good job of like creating like they've created great little shorts to be like, here are these characters, here's like the like mega clip of them through like 6 different movies, so you remember what they're doing.
And they do a phenomenal job creating their own kind of mythologies and stories that make them each unique and enjoyable in their own way. WandaVision, there's nothing like WandaVision in the rest of the MCU. And sure, some people bemoaned, it went back to the Marvel stuff by the end. Well, yeah, it's still a superhero show, but at the same time, doing it through this lens is so fascinating. Much like how Captain America Winter Soldier, everyone was praising it as basically a political thriller, but with superheroes. We have Ant-Man, the original one. It's a heist movie, but with superheroes. We don't know if Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is still going to be a horror movie. Like that was the original concept of it. It was going to be like the first Marvel horror movie. And if that's still the case, and we have that genre going for them. Loki was a great character drama. Falcon and Winter Soldier talked about racial tension in history, legacies of heroes. And again, it's kind of that political thriller stuff. I don't think there's been a bad Captain America thing at all. I think all the Captain America movies have been great, and Falcon and Winter Soldier was great.
Civil War had what I call like the Frasier plot problem, where like the entire like conflict could have been like resolved with like if two people had like a 13-second conversation and like it just hinged on them not ever being like, hey, let's just
You say that, but then remember, by the end, when Iron Man showed up to actually help and have the conversation, Zemo pulled the rug out from under him.
I'm just saying, like, if at any point Captain America had been like, hey, remember when we found out that the entire American government was run by Nazis for like 60 years? I'm kind of worried something like that's going on. And people were like, oh, right, that did happen. That was weird. Yeah, okay, you do you, Cap. Like, I'm just saying.
Fair enough point.
Just
still better than the Civil War comic.
Now, when are we going to get MCU Illuminati? That's the real question.
I think that's what's coming next.
Okay.
I think that's what they're. Have you seen the
Hulk?
trailer for? Have you seen the trailer for Multiverse of Madness?
I have not seen it yet.
Then I'm not going to say anything. I would recommend you watch that trailer.
Okay. Because you need don't you need Professor X on side for Illuminati, and also Doom?
I think you should watch the trailer for Multiverse of Madness.
Okay, all right, I'll get on that. I'll do. On the meantime, while we're all waiting for Secret Wars and whatnot, let the folks know where they can find you, because this has been a blast having you on the show.
You can find me at atopthefourthwall.com. It's where I keep the big archive of everything I've ever done. Nice little website layout. It's all easy to navigate and all that jazz. But otherwise, if you don't want to leave the comfort of YouTube, just look for Atop the Fourth Wall or History of Power Rangers or Long Box of the Damned, where every October I dress up like a ghoul and talk about horror comics. And most recently, I've started doing late night double feature. Any month that has 5 Mondays in it, the 5th Monday, I dress up as a different kind of horror host, who's more like a used car salesman. And I do a Troy McClure impression as I talk about horror movies.
Oh, and we were spending so much time discussing, the Beyond or Learning How to Pee. I forgot to mention our own collaboration, Voice from Beyond, or Voice from Beyond, Voice from the Dark.
Yep.
That was so much fun. Like, if folks have heard that or seen some of the footage of it, like Lewis, talking about pulling the Nick Fury and assembling the scattershot at odds like group of misfits.
So I don't know if the people out there are aware of this, but once upon a time, Lehman and I were we're on a website together. Things didn't end too well on that website.
They did not.
But one of the things that website did every year for a while was the anniversary movies, where they would celebrate the website's founding by bringing 20 of their producers together and creating a movie or a fight scene or something like that along those lines. The quality of them is up for debate. I still enjoy them all, even though I recognize all their flaws, especially since some people who were on these movies turned out to be not great people. So it's hard. So sometimes that can be hard to rewatch, much like how, any movie or something like that can be hard to rewatch and everything like that. But the frustrating thing about those for a lot of people on the site was that they never got asked to do it. They would be, the recurring things would be like, we're only going to bring in certain people. And it came across like kind of an elitist prestige thing. You matter on the website if you get asked to be a part of this. And it was kind of unfair to a lot of producers because they never got a chance to be on there. And the anniversary movies were a great big promotional tool for people to check out. Hey, here are the people who are on this website you should check out. And it was just and of course, by the time everyone had this mass exodus of leaving the website, a lot of people had never gotten a chance to be a part of it. And me and Leslie Rice, who does his own show, The Fear Fan, we were like, you know what? We'll do the Thanos thing. Fine, I'll do it myself. So we're like, okay, we can't afford the cost of like flying 20 people out to a certain location, especially since a lot of the people who were not participating were international people. Diamanda Hagen, for instance, in Ireland, can't come over here without like spending thousands of dollars. Because it also, filming a full movie is not just the flight costs, it's housing them and feeding them for a week and a half at a time. I made my own movie, and just having 6 other people. I say 6 other people, actually ended up being more like 10 because, of course, I had the crew who came in elsewhere. But having that many people for 10 days, it costs a lot of money. So, all right, what can we do that we can still have everyone together and still doing a project together and still doing something like that? And I'm a big fan of Doctor Who Big Finish audio dramas. And they're like radio plays. where everyone can like record their own lines, or we can record together over Skype or Zoom as we're doing right now. Although Zoom wasn't a thing at the time when we did it. It was like Zoom really came about because of the pandemic, but we had Skype, we had Discord, we had any number of things. And if people really wanted to, just couldn't match their schedule, they can just record on their own. And I originally, I wasn't going to write the script. I was going to like contribute some ideas and concepts and stuff like that, maybe write a little bit. But then Leslie's personal life got in the way of things. I was in the middle of my 10th anniversary at the time. So when that, and so I was like, well, I'll get things started. I'll write the first scene for you, and I'll get, and we'll go from there. And things just kept being slowed down. I was like, you want me just to write the whole damn thing? And he's like, yes, please. And so I went ahead and did it. And I had so much fun doing that. Every week I just like set aside an hour, write up another scene as much as I could, put it in a Google Doc and share it with everyone and say, okay, give me your feedback. Does this look good to you? Does this sound good? And a lot of people were like, well, I'll wait till the script is finished and then I'll give feedback. And they did that. When the script was finally finished, everyone was so excited and happy. They gave me lines back. They gave me like, I would never say something like this. Hey, how about you try this line instead? Can you throw in a reference to this? Like, we organized this in so many ways. One of the other problems with the anniversary movies was they were all written by Doug Walker, and Doug had his own preconceived notions of what everyone does, didn't do any research, and he always tried to write everyone exactly like him, where everyone's an asshole or they were idiots. Because Doug has this philosophy of all comedy derives from misery. It does not, but we won't dwell into that right now. But as a result, everyone was kind of a jerk or they were stupid. So one of the things that I was dedicated to doing, I am not as familiar with some of my colleagues like Lehman. I know we're on the website together. We've talked before, but I haven't actually like watched a lot of his stuff. Here, you send me what you think is representative of your work, and I will watch it, and I'll talk to you a bit about your character. How big a role do you want? How big of a part do you want to have in this? Are you okay with just being on the sidelines? Do you want to have a subplot throughout the movie? And people were divided. They had like, okay, I just want a smaller role, or yes, can I give me something with a little more meat to it? And everyone was happy with that. And I tried to stay as true to people as I could, and they loved it. And I got
to be a baddie. I got to have multiple evil voices.
Yes, you got to be a baddie. I'm so happy. The one thing I got wrong with Lovecraft in that movie, and I kind of took this for granted and didn't ask you right out because I just kind of figured it would be fine, was you have all this knowledge of the supernatural and Lovecraftian monster we were facing in that, but in Ask Lovecraft doesn't actually believe in any of that stuff. He thinks it's all fiction.
It worked out just fine. I had so much fun with that. And like, yes, there were certain unpleasantnesses, but the involved with, how we went our separate ways. But like the thing that I loved was making those relationships, and the fact that we've maintained them, the fact that I get to like do some fun narrating on every Halloween, every October.
Yes, I'm so happy you still do that for me. You have become the new voice of the of my October trailers, because I love putting out a trailer promoting what I'm going to be covering every year in October for Atop the Fourth Wall. It used to be another guy who is still on that website, but like, I don't have a relationship with him anymore. And it's like, okay, who else do I know who has a wonderful, great voice for radio? Of course, Lehman Kessler. So thank you again for your continued great work in that regard.
I always have fun with that. I always have fun just going like just full late night monster movie. This has been a blast, Lewis. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being such a great friend and colleague over the years. This is just, I really love the fact that this sort of strange art form of dressing up in front of the camera and putting on the internet like brings folks together. And I cherish the fact that we've gotten to know each other and gotten to spend time. And thank you for celebrating the 10th anniversary of Ask Lovecraft by coming on After Dark. It's been a blast.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
This has been Ask Lovecraft After Dark, the sister program to Ask Lovecraft, which after 10 years is coming to its conclusion in June. We have been so grateful for all of you for listening, for subscribing, for telling your friends. Do go look up Lewis's work at Atop the Fourth Wall. If you're interested in this show, you can find it at asklovecraft.com. If you're interested in what's going on in my world, you can go to lehmankessler.com or follow me on Twitter at Lehman Kessler. Thank you all so much. Have a fantastic evening. And Lewis, thank you once again.
Thank you.